Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Sorry about the delay. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting, regular meeting for September 13th, 2021. Can we have a roll call, please?
Nancy. Here. Livingston.
Here.
Myself.
Here.
Parsons.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Teterich.
Here.
Savage Williams.
Here. Thank you. So our first item on the agenda is written communication. Dr. Davis, do we have any written communication?
We have no written communication this evening.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Witherspoon.
Thank you, President Savage Williams. So I wanted to take this as a moment of privilege to actually make my official announcement that on your board agenda this evening is asking for your approval of my pending retirement that will take place this coming summer after this school year. I must tell you, I know how many people count the days until their retirement, but for me, this is bittersweet. Because while I certainly hear all of these things about you've earned your retirement, and I hope I have, to be perfectly honest, I leave completely loving this school and this job. And it has been truly an honor and a privilege. And I don't want to talk too much in the past tense because I've got till next June. But anytime you make an announcement like this, clearly it signals that transition. It signals that milestone. So I came here 16 years ago, but I've actually been a superintendent of schools for 33 years. But I was thinking about that today, that ETHS accounts for almost half of my long career as being a superintendent. And I think for me personally, it's hugely fitting because I really do see this as the capstone of my career. I see this as where I was able to build on my past successes and my past experiences and come to a school district and really bring to fruition what I believe is important in a school. The equity mission, the anti-racist mission, the making sure that it's a school for all young people, making sure that there are not racial issues that hold some students back while they benefit others more disproportionately. And we work very hard on that. This board, this particular board, you have just done wonders on it. The goals that you have adopted, the equity statement that was actually adopted prior to this complete board, but you updated and reinforced and reaffirmed says so much about you and about this school district and about what we believe. So I look forward to the remainder of the year. I am not too much right now at this point about looking back, but if I ever decide to sit on the front porch in a rocking chair, I guess I'll do that. But I certainly have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and so I'm looking forward to how I will move that ahead to continue this work in a more, not more, but in a productive way. And so it is exciting while at the same time pretty daunting for me. I want to thank my wife, Cynthia, who's here tonight. She's been through this journey with me. She met me when I was an assistant principal. We've had quite a journey together on this. In fact, it was my first administrative job when we met. And so we've journeyed completely through this, to say the least. I also want to thank Kim Rapp, who's here. Kim was my first executive assistant, and I'm not sure who was running the district those first few years, Kim or me. But together we managed to do it pretty well. We were quite a team. And Kathy Meals is here as well, way in the back.
Kathy.
And Kathy was my first communications director. And so the nice thing is, is, we could kind of put out whatever we thought was the reality. And it seemed to work pretty well. I also want to thank one other person who's here tonight. That's David Truancy. David was actually the Teachers Council. That's the Teachers Union here at ETHS, and he was the president of the Teachers Council when I came, and a real colleague and partner in helping us move forward on initiatives that took a lot of challenge and energy. It was a lot to do, and not everybody was sure about how it was going to turn out. And it's nice to sit here 16 years later and see where we are. So board, thank you. It's a joy working with you. I know it's going to be a joy working with you the remainder of the year, the school year. And thank you to all of the former board members and all of the people that I've worked with here who have really, truly made it possible for us to move ETHS along as we have. I will probably say time and again this year and for many years to come, it's a great day to be a wild kid.
Wow, well, I am just going to say just a few words, just a few, because I want to, first of all, acknowledge that and accept your letter of intent to retire as of June 30th, 2022, not a day before. So I know I can say on behalf of this board that we are deeply appreciative. It's just with such gratitude that you have been the superintendent of this amazing district for the past 16 years. I feel like we've been extremely fortunate to have you as a leader in our district and in our community. And you know, I could say so much about how you've transformed this district. You've demonstrated for our community and for the country how to identify and respond to institutional systemic racism, what needs to happen. And we know that there are other agencies in our community who that emulated the work that we've done here. So you have truly impacted this community. And Dr. Witherspoon, I know that you worked tirelessly behind the scenes to advance this cause. There's no question about it. And while doing that, our academic performance has increased for all of our students. The enrollment of students in the advanced placement courses continue to rise, especially for Black and brown students. So under your leadership, ETHS has been recognized by the U.S. News and World Report and the Washington Post as one of the top 2 to 3% of schools in the country, high schools in the country. So we just appreciate how you've guided our district and modeled for other leaders how to lead with integrity and compassion and dignity. And there's just so much more I could go on and on, but I won't because we've got some time, and I know that others will continue to express their appreciation and gratitude over the year. But really, just thank you. We just will be happy to honor you in the next few months when the time comes. But I just want to say thank you, and I guess I accept it. Thank you. All right. So the next items that we have on the agenda are items for information, and the first item is information on Black Lives Matter Way.
And I'm going to invite Coach Ellis, our varsity basketball coach, leader of our entire basketball program here at ETHS, and several of our seniors who are just some of the best models, role models that we could ever ask for in this school. And yes, it's a joy to me, and you're going to hear the story, but it's a joy to me to know that, after 15 years into the 16th year, that we are now located on Black Lives Way, Black Lives Matter Way. Coach Ellis?
Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon, and I want to extend my congratulations to your pending retirement, and just let you know that the word fortune came to my mind too, fortunate. To be able to have you directing our leadership. And we're going to continue to stack up that fortune for these remaining months and weeks all the way. So we're going to definitely miss you. So thank you for all you've done for us. And not only Dr. Witherspoon, but the rest of the school administration, and also certainly the ETHS Board of Education, the project that we started a couple summers ago to have Black Lives Matter Way painted as street art out in front of our school on 1600 Dodge Avenue. Without your direction and without your leadership, that path wouldn't have been so certain to follow. It was certain because of your vision for our school district and what it stands for. We've had some basketball players that strongly participated in the project, many of whom are in college right now, that graduated. They came back to help see the project through. They were motivated, just a background story, they were motivated by the articles and the press covering of the Black Lives Matter Way street mural painted out in front of Washington, D.C. And I think that sent a strong message to our country during the time that it was needed. And our players, our student athletes, were fortunate enough that they wanted to share that same vision with what their beliefs were in the community of Evanston. And we just felt like the location of that painting would be something that all visitors to our high school would see about what our values were. And I'm just grateful that we have leadership and we have student athletes that share that same vision too. So again, appreciate you recognizing and honoring that project. We apologize. We had the paint that the city uses to try to make it a little more lasting. But the difference is, one, when it's rolled on versus one when it's sprayed on, that's the difference in the time that it lasts. But to have the city of Evanston, and I want to make sure I recognize them as well, to have the city of Evanston follow through with the Black Lives Matter Way honorary street signs. When we first started the project, we expected to run into hurdles that we'd have to overcome. And they pretty much said, this is a great project, we're all for it. So the city of Evanston deserves a lot of credit also for making it happen. So again, thank you so much, and it's an honor, to represent our school with the basketball team. So
Yes.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
And again, to these young men, thank you, because you really are modeling what this school stands for, but also what you stand for and what your generation stands for. I really believe you can be the generation that changes the world in ways that it's needed changed in a long time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Totally agree. All right. It's an incredible way to start a meeting.
It is.
Always great to see the students. All right, so the next item on the agenda is an update on the student discipline data, and Dr. Robinson?
Yes, Dr. Keith Robinson, Associate Principal, and actually, he'll then move it into the item following that, the discipline and suspension report, so
Okay,
it's somewhat
so two.
seamless. Oh, and
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dr. Levy.
Dr. Levy, thank you.
Our Director of Research and Assessment here in the school district. And actually, what you're going to be hearing is a very welcomed report on data that needed to be corrected, got corrected, and paints a different picture than we thought we were hearing for quite some time. So Keith and Carrie.
I guess I should clear it before I turn on the mic. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I am super excited about the presentation of the data that we have for today, and very happy that Dr. Levy is here with me to help kind of explain some of the processes and some of the major data points. So today I am going to give some information and updates on the exclusion data that we saw presented in the Chicago Tribune, actually, a few weeks ago. And there was a story Chuck Gowdy did. Anytime Chuck Gowdy comes digging, it's always something special. So he brought some data to the attention too about school exclusion and other districts in the state. And Evanston was actually named as one of the schools of concern. So the exclusionary data, as per the state, is defined as egregious behavior that warrants school removal. All right, so behavior that's egregious enough where there's no opportunity for the student to safely stay in the school. These are cases where students are simply placed in an alternative setting. So these are the numbers that from 2016, where we clearly met the threshold for racial disproportionality. And I see our friends from the Moran Center here, and I've got to just give them a shout out as well. They are part of our discipline committee, and we all had an opportunity to look at the data, and they really expressed some concerns about this particular data as well. So we kind of looked into it more deeply. This is also the data from 2020, just last year, where you can see that we ranked 9th in the state. This is not one of those things where you want to be ranked top 10 in the state for. But it expresses here that there were 86 cases, and definitely the disproportionality rate is extremely high. So after kind of looking and digging into the data, we discovered that what was actually being reported and uploaded to the state was actually incorrect. And ironically, it was interventions of restorative acts that were uploaded and incorrectly tagged. So on the board here, you'll see the different items that were actually coded as school exclusions. I mean, you can see with P circles and having conversations with social workers and deans and intervention programs for substance abuse clearly is not that. So we were able to make those corrections, and moving forward, we really anticipate better data and representation of the good work that we're actually doing with our students. So I guess I should pause there for that piece of it to answer any questions that the board or anyone may have for the exclusionary data.
Yeah.
Gretchen?
Thanks, Keith. Maybe you were looking at my eyeballs above my mask and interpreting. I think that what you're sharing is good news in that this appeared to be wrong. So I have sort of two questions. One is, how did the wrong data get reported? And I'm not, it seems like a logical question to ask. This is water under the bridge, I'm looking forward and all that good stuff. But it seems like kind of a big error. And so I'm curious about how it happened. And then secondly, and this might be where you're going, so did we then go back and sort of correct however many years this mistaken data was submitted? Because this did get publicized, and so what have we done to sort of correct the record?
Yeah, so the data that I've seen goes back to at least 2014, which is quite a ways back. So in an effort each year, we're continuing to look at data, and, I'm continuing to see the actual practices in my position, and just things just didn't add up. And again, with it being really highlighted and a point of discussion from the discipline committee, just dug deeper into wondering why those particular items were uploaded and tagged, and we discovered it.
So do we do the uploading?
It's,
Somebody within this building does the
Yes.
uploading? Okay,
So
I don't need to go further than that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, so we bear some of the responsibility. This wasn't, the state didn't screw this up. We gave them the wrong info. And then it led to this characterization of us as doing, I mean, is that, I'm just trying to understand the whole thing.
I'm going to jump in with a little technical piece to it. So to answer part of your question, we cannot go back retroactively and change anything. We can only go forward and have our data adjusted going forward. But the technical answer is, so there are state codes for all discipline, and their definition leaves some room for interpretation. And these discipline categories in our system were linked to a state code that is much more restrictive, like exclusionary, than what these restorative practices are. So that's like the technical, like that's what happened way behind the scenes in our IS system, is we were linking to the wrong state, to a state code that made it look like we were basically doing this like kind of more exclusionary suspension,
Right.
expulsion, than what these actually.
And what the state really wanted was expulsions and
Correct.
suspensions, I'm
Right.
assuming. I
Yes.
mean, those are the classic,
Correct.
you're not in the building if you are expelled or if you are suspended.
Correct.
Out of school
But
suspension.
Yeah.
all of the restorative justice were in.
Clearly
correctly, like,
not,
right.
right.
Absolutely. So that's what happened, like. way
So it's
behind the scenes.
complicated, in other words.
But without, to what Keith's saying, without getting asked these questions and having a step back and actually looking at actual student data, see like, I don't understand why this, and then being able to dig in and look at it, I don't think we would have gotten to the point and figured out all the way down in the weeds that it was linked to the wrong state code, and that's what's causing this problem.
Right.
So,
Dr. Witherspoon?
Yeah, so let me
That's
just
good.
reiterate, because I think this is really important. The irony here is unbearable.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So the deans kept saying to me, Eric, we're doing all this work. We're doing all these alternatives to suspension, all of this restorative practices. We're doing all these social worker referrals because we're not excluding students. And they're just shaking their heads, like, we don't seem to make any progress here. And again, the irony of this is, we were making so much progress. We were doing so many of the things that this board and all of us believe in. And we were not only not getting credit for it, but it was actually being interpreted that we were excluding kids and doing the opposite. So, while we can't go back and change state records, we now know that that was just simply not the case. And we now know that we've been making great progress on all these matters. And so the good news is, going forward, I mean, we're going to look like a miracle school next year.
But I think also we can tell, we don't even have to wait till next year, right? And here we are in a public board meeting, obviously setting the record straight. I mean, this is a story that should be told now.
Sure.
And that I think should be shared widely with the press who reported on this in, sort of a gleeful clickbait kind of way, right? About
Right, and
schools who have this terrible,
So in the news story, he actually commented that he spoke with ETHS officials who
I think I saw
reportedly-
that.
Yeah. So that was a great start.
Yeah, but it didn't, I don't think, I saw that and it didn't, It made it sound like they spoke with ETHS officials, and ETH officials were trying to explain this away. I mean, that could be a reading of it. I think the story is very different, and Eric just articulated it. The story is that we have been doing the right thing for a long time, and due to the complicated data reporting requirements that are burdensome and blah, 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 we got caught in this unfortunate I mean, it's really unfortunate characterization because it describes something that we are not. And I think, yeah, while I appreciate that there was this little mention in the report, which I did see at the time, I don't think it did us justice.
Monique?
So I agree with everything. I think we definitely have an opportunity to tell our story. But what I appreciate most, serving on the discipline committee and seeing the efforts and hearing about the efforts that are happening, but not seeing the numbers match up, is Dr. Robinson's just tenacity and just his bravery to uncover this data and to talk about it and be very honest about it. And what he has done is he's presented this information under the lens that I know we're doing the work, we're still not where we need to be, but something's not right. So, as a member, I appreciate that because what like Kara, like you said, we could just still be doing this. If he was just, okay, we'll try something else, or we'll put something else up there, or we'll figure this out, but that's not how he leads this committee, and as a result, we're here. So now it becomes, what do we do now going forward with the information we know and have to make sure we keep doing things better and doing it, questioning our past practices, because that's what this is. We've been talking about this for a very long time, and we've made some headway, and we've definitely done some things different, and we've invited people to the committee that don't always agree with us in how we do things, right? You don't always do that. You close people out because you don't want to hear all the, but we're being very transparent and trying to get this right. So I just want to make sure that I lift that up because that's important, and that's true leadership in my opinion, because you show all the stuff. So now we know, and we have to figure out how to move forward and do better, because we have better to do.
Thank you for that. All right. Since we're talking about the discipline committee.
Speaking of doing better.
I just wanted to update the board too with some of the amazing work, really, really good work that the committee has done. And, it goes to even looking at how we say things in that deficit language. So under the direction of Anthony King, one of our deans who chaired this committee, he reviewed a lot of forms and documents, and we continue to do so to really, remove that deficit talk and really try to be more asset-based in how we communicate in our reporting, our documents, and our referrals. So that's going to be something that's going to be more prevalent as we move forward. This was a big one, and you'll see why a little later. This is about 2 years into work where disruptive acts and defiance of authority are like these two major buckets that are just extremely subjective to the fact, if I try to use the analogy of a physician, it's hard to treat a sickness you don't know. So when you're able to really uncover and understand what you're treating, you can accurately treat it. So for many, many years, these were two of our major buckets, and you'll see in the data moving forward, just hundreds and hundreds of these subjective acts. Some of the work under the support Dr. Wilczynski and his team, about a year and a half ago, they actually went in because, and I'll go back to the work of the discipline committee, looking at that data, he said, hey, let's go back and literally uncover what is actually in the referrals, because this subjective nature talk, we don't know what we're doing here. So he and his team, they looked at about 382, and what they found, which emerged, was about 15 different categories. And this is kind of what they came up with. Since then, we've kind of narrowed it down just a few more. But what we're excited about is we've removed those 2 buckets. So now, folks who are writing referrals, they're actually naming the behavior so that we can actually target the intervention and support and do what we can to change it. So we're super, super excited about that. In those restorative acts, we've partnered with some community partners, and 3 you see here on the board: Rebel Human, Open Studio Project, and here, let me get my notes here: Black, Brown, and Breathing.
Breathing. Yes.
So what I hope you notice is that theme of socio-emotional support. Rebel Human is a community partner that provides strategies of mindfulness and self-regulation to help recenter behavior and restore the harm to the community. And Black, Brown, and Breathing, they also create and provide a space to gather, breathe, cry, celebrate, and they specialize in healing-centered activations where they do breath work and mediation and music and sound healing and community dialogue and more. And finally, Open Studio Project. This is an amazing program, too, that provides art therapy and promotes personal growth, socio-emotional learning, and community and well-being. So we're super happy to have this as options and value added to our school community, to, especially now post-COVID, to really help students as they transition back with the new behaviors and that we're noticing. So we're super happy to have them with us. Open Studio is here a few days a week, and we're also thinking about targeting a lot more centered intervention with Rebel Human with some of the work in our alternative to our ALC, Alternative Learning Center, in school suspension. One of the other things in looking at the reporting and how we've done it in so many years, I had an idea to make it just more comprehensive. So I think it could be kind of noisy and really hard to follow. And one thing that really started that organizing was the state reporting, where you have the big, the major incidents that we have to report each year, but we also have that school exclusionary data, which we have not reported on our annual report, which I believe should be reported because it just should. So we're going to have a section in the annual reports moving forward with state reporting only, that section. And then you're going to go to the other behaviors, which is something that's more localized, where we can really dig down to see the behaviors that our students are exhibiting and how we can help encourage change. We're also going to have a section of restorative actions. The deans in the school, under your leadership, we've really provided a lot of restorative acts. It is an expectation, but we're not telling the story like we should. So what we're going to do moving forward is and you'll get a preview tonight of how we've used restorative acts, and you'll see how it's being presented tonight. And finally, we'll continue to use data, longitudinal data, to help drive those decisions and also identify growth. All right, so we'll transition into the actual data. So these are just some highlights from the data in the board packet. This data, it tells the unique number of students and the percent of actions that are suspensions. And I want you to note, just in 2019-20, there were 720 students who received a total of 3,800 or 3,811 actions. Now, I'll remind you, the actions, that's not a bad thing. The actions can be a good thing, and it goes back to some of the restorative actions that you saw a few slides back with the restorative programmings that we have. Some students may receive several of them. So those actions are not a terrible thing. And the total number of suspensions was 10% of all the actions, which is extremely significant. In 2021, there were 27 students who received a total of 47 actions, and 0 suspensions, and I'll report that one more time. 2021, there were 27 students who received a total of 47 actions and 0 suspensions, and we're very, very proud of that. If we're looking at the next chart here, this talks about
Keith,
just...
let me just put it in connection. So you'll see like 3,800 students.
Yes.
You know, and that might be something that happened on a day. With nearly 4,000 students, we have over 665,000 student days a year. So, you got to start thinking in terms of thousands of students, almost 200 school days, and over nearly 700,000 opportunities for something to happen on a day, to kind of keep that in perspective.
Thank you, Eric, for adding that. So this one here has the number of actions and incident by subcode, and we just listed some of the top behaviors that we saw here. And again, what I want you to notice is 90% of the actions were, in fact, restorative acts. 8% of them were inside suspensions, and also 2% were outside. Restorative actions, these were for those egregious, subjective, disruptive acts. All right, so again, I can't even tell you exactly what they are. In the future, we'll know exactly what they are. The ALC contributed 31% of the behaviors. And these actions were for drug offenses, and other notable reasons were fighting, theft, and or robbery.
Could I ask a quick question about the categories? You were talking earlier about defiance of authority and disruptive acts as being these subjective. Totally agree with that. But there was a third one that pops up in a different chart, but I don't see listed here, and that's called disorderly behavior. It seems to me that's the same kind of thing. What happened to that one?
Kind of. Well, the first two, as you can see in this particular graph, these were the top.
Got it.
So, I mean,
So
and if you go back.
does disorderly behavior exist anymore as a category, or did that get subsumed into how we broke out those other subjective categories?
It is, by nature, a subjective category.
Sure.
I can't remember if it's still an option. I know these two rose to the top of the
Got it.
attention. And so these are the ones that we really focused on. As a matter of fact, that other third one may not have even made the top 10.
Yep. Got it.
All right. Yes.
So I just wanted to point out a highlight. So for this table, you see Dr. Robinson has only like the alternative suspension and the restorative justice. We've pulled out conference with deans because it's such a large bucket where really a lot of the actions are conference with deans. And what you'll see in the report is we've pulled out the 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 inside suspension into a separate table. So really, there's a table now that's looking at just the restorative justice actions, and then suspensions are different, and suspensions have their own like separate section, so you won't lose any longitudinal. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
Right. And in the future, thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Lever. And in the future, when you see these other subcodes here that's listed, hopefully what we're going to do is kind of tease that out. Or what the heck is other subcodes? So once we put the big five and all the state reporting in its own place, these other behaviors will be noted and identified.
So you may have more data, but it'll be more transparent and more specific.
Right. This is 2021 data, where you can see, and again, proudly, that we had 47 restorative actions for 27 students, and this, again, was 100% restorative actions were taking place. There were 0 students last year. These were the behaviors that the students support, the dean supported. This is a Gretchen Livingston slide. and it's great, and it really does tell the story. But what you see here is that longitudinal data of unique students who are suspended, both inside and out, the percentage of the students' populations, as well as the N, which again, we're proud to, and I know there's an asterisk for that, the COVID year, but we're proud that there's a significant, there's a downward trend the past decade, which is great.
Well, and I think it really does, thank you for highlighting this. Thank you for including the percentages, because the percentages tell the story much more truthfully isn't the right word, but accurately, I think, than looking at raw numbers, because you can see a very clear line down, which is the proper direction in this case. And, we've gone from 16% down to 6% with hardly a bobble along the way. And that 16 to 6 is a more dramatic story than 470 to 232, which is just, the raw numbers don't tell the story, because the number of students in our building changes. And I think it's just much more relevant and important to pay attention to those percentages. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for pushing us.
Getting that in there. And we should do this everywhere, all the time.
Got it. Copy that. So this is a breakdown by percentage. Now, in the report, the actual N is included. But what I love about this particular chart is, again, you see all the subgroups, and there's a downward trend. If you look back at the 2009-10, I mean, when you're talking about racial predictability for discipline, look now. So that's great that, there not only is that downward trend, but when you're looking at the discipline predictability around race, it's very minimal in this particular chart, which, again, that's always the goal, and this isn't the end. We've got a lot more good work to do, but this is definitely data going in the right direction, which is very, very encouraging. And finally, a few years back, we were asked to present, theft was one of the categories that we saw a large number. The question of, what the heck is being stolen? And now we entitled this lost property. And it's lost property for a couple of reasons. First of all, Johnny may lose something, and so it's not stolen, but we also know that some of the items that are lost, my daughter, for one, she lost her phone, and luckily it was recovered, so that's a case of she left it behind, no one took it from her, but it was still luckily recovered. So we added 2 items here in the last 2 years. We noticed a great deal of AirPods and earbuds, headphones, however you want to call them, were being reported as lost. So with the 2019-20 data, it was at least 21% of the items that were lost. As well as bikes. Bikes were huge. Even last year, bikes made up of 13%. Notice there are only 8 items that were reported lost last year. And this is all reported. You know, there could very well be a way more that just didn't make it to the safety office. But this is that information as well. Yep, that is my report, and I am super happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Here, as a hand up.
Hello. So one of my thoughts and then a question, with the restorative practices, and thank you for the report. I'm thinking about how our kids are our canaries in the mines, and when they're acting out or doing things, they're telling us what's wrong about our system, our climate. And I would hope not obviously to take anything that's supposed to be in confidence, but they may be saying a lot of things during those restorative circles and various other practices that could inform the system. And so I hope that there's some sort of data gathering there that could feed back to the adults in the building to help us. And then the question would be, when we're looking at the incident reports, are we taking into account who's making them, their gender, their race, what courses, what departments, because I'm guessing there's patterns there as well.
Of course there are patterns. So again, when Dr. Wilczynski and his team did the kind of the forensics study with all the referrals, they did notice some patterns in certain departments, maybe even drilled down to certain teachers. We were able to do that. And so we're able to really support teachers that need a different level of support and offer those strategies and address them. So yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Pat.
Well, thank you for this report, and I'm really excited to see the data once we can recalibrate based on the new codes.
So am I.
I know you are.
Yeah.
So, one thing, over a couple years ago, I remember having a conversation here around disruptive acts, defiance of authority, and the one I always thought was crazy was unauthorized presence. Never really fully understood that, and I remember us talking about it, and we really didn't have a clear definition. And so I'm really grateful that you're digging into these because words matter. And so I'm really excited that we're more clear about that. And as a result, we're starting to see better data just by being clear. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of supporting the adults in the building, the teachers, especially security on that unauthorized presence. Because I think we talked about it that being black kids getting named for that much more than white kids, and security kind of not maybe identifying some of their own biases in the moment. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of the training or preparation or aha moments you're having with the adults around some of these, the clarity that you're really drilling it down to.
Well, sure, I can definitely give it a shot. It is definitely another subjective category because, what really does that mean? So one of the things that I'm excited to do is to do what we did a couple of years ago and drill down in those specific referrals to see who's writing them. I can imagine perhaps there are more safety, maybe. And where are these alleged pockets of mystery? When we're able to get more information, we'll be able to support our staff in a different way so that they can, have the skills needed to, do what's needed to be done because again, that subjective nature is kind of a mystery. So I'm curious to know which other ones are going to slide up, because there will be another category that slides up and becomes that kind of dump. And I'm hoping it's not the unauthorized presence, but I am hoping that would be one of the things that we'll do. We have our first discipline committee meeting tomorrow. So I'm happy to bring that to the team to see if that's something that we can do.
So is there sort of some routine PD around discipline with teachers and security, or do we share the data a couple times a year? Like, that's kind of, I was kind of hoping to hear a little bit more about the process of supporting the adults with the information or with strategies or whatever it is, however you do it.
Yeah, our deans and, and directors make themselves available to support teachers that need it. And I know, I hate to push it to you, Dr. Bates, but I know you work directly with the directors and lead their efforts, and hoping you might be able to provide a little more information.
Well, we know that a lot of this this comes from our focus on social emotional learning and our professional development, what we can do inside the classroom to make it a more welcoming, affirming environment, and also an environment where there's goal setting for individual students, and really meeting students where they are, and that's what we're doing, and that's a full multi-year approach, and we're laying that out. We've actually started over the summer, knowing that this was going to be a difficult year of transition for our students back into the school, that we laid out a course that the teachers enrolled in to take and prepare and plan on integrating social emotional learning into their daily practice. And also, we're also doing mindfulness practices in our PE health and wellness courses, integrating those on a daily basis. So we're talking about self-monitoring, breathing exercises, meditation, ways to really connect with your body, and we're being very direct in that instruction. And actually, our partners have provided that professional development, and our PE department has been working through, I believe it's at least a 5-6 hour program of training in that area to implement directly into the classroom.
I also want to give a shout out to Dr. Robinson. He works very closely with the deans daily, many times hourly, reviewing, decisions and what need to be gone. Our deans are really into this, but having a leader who does what I would call daily professional development is powerful. And then all of our safety undergoes training sessions, almost every week? Again, trying to be sure that we're communicating the philosophy as well as the understanding of the kind of things that you're bringing up. And finally, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Campbell, because he and I also meet on an often enough basis, not nearly that regularly, but with, in particular, the deans, really trying to solidify a deeper understanding of what these things mean and what our philosophy is. But I want to point out, the deans are really into this. I don't mean to make it sound like they need our constant attention, but they do deserve our constant support.
Yeah, and I'll just add that our ongoing professional development is about making classrooms more welcoming, right? And that is something that we talk about at the macro level and something that we talk about at the micro level. So with regard to unauthorized presence and so many other factors that could go into that, when we unpack what that means, that's about creating welcoming spaces in the classroom. So one change is with our 10-minute passing periods. It's easy to hide out for 42 minutes. It's not easy to hide out for 85 minutes, right? We're a big building, but, we're getting our heads around making sure that kids are where they need to be, and that the classroom is a place that they really want to be. And that is an ongoing conversation. As a matter of fact, the department chairs and the teachers had one today just about that. So,
And I'll just finally add that, as we all know, that behavior is a symptom of something else. So that when we look at the SEL and make those connections and support students in a different way, I think those behaviors and those trends will change.
Yep. Thank you.
I really appreciate you saying that because we all know that students have come back to us as they are with everything they have to bring. And for some students, their stories are pretty complex. And we don't even know, what they experienced the last 18 months when they returned. So I just appreciate the emphasis on the social emotional component for these students. And even as we look at behaviors and try to categorize these behaviors, that's really the message of care. That's the message that we have to continue to send, and I know that we try to do that. And it gets complex in a system like this with all the different layers. We've got the administration, we've got the deans, we've got, the teachers, we've got the safety. It's all, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people to get this message and to understand this message. And for some of them, particularly those who have students in front of them every day and are struggling with some of these behaviors, or they see these behaviors every day, those are the ones that really have to really drill down and try to understand some of this and implement some of these different strategies that that may be different for them, maybe a challenge for them. And they're the ones that need a lot of support. Liz.
Hi. I was just wondering, what is the average duration of a suspension in school or out of school?
It depends on the behavior. If it's something that really warrants school removal, there's so many different levels, and that is through progressive discipline. But that's kind of, I wouldn't say that would be kind of a subjective type of deal. It's a neat as case by case type of basis based on the behavior.
Do you have a range of like 3 days to 7 days to 10 days or?
Well, in past years, and some of the data reflects this, that we have been able to increase class time for students and reduce seat time in ALC. But one of our missions this year is to reimagine our in-school suspension, because with our block schedule, as you can imagine, if a student is in the ALC for an extended period of days, I mean, that can be devastating academically for them in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really, really looking to reimagine how we use our in-school suspension, our ALC, even now. So, I'm happy that we're pushing the system in a sense to really figure out how we can best support those students and really use the ALC for the most egregious behaviors as we can.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering about was, like how many days can a student miss a particular class before they would end up failing that class, and how that ties in with suspension days and ultimately graduation rates,
Sure.
If suspensions were to cause a student to fail a class from not being present.
So in years past, students who were assigned to the ALC, there is this connection of having classroom assignments. So the kid is in the school, they have access to school services, just not in the classroom. So there is some intentionality about providing what's going on in the classroom upstairs with what's going on in the ALC. But, this is a game changer with the block scheduling. Good. And how we're going to elevate the usage and how we're going to reimagine the ALC as we know it.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? This is really a great and important report. I mean, I feel like for all the work we're doing in the district, I feel like this is like our next real hurdle. So, so I really appreciate this. I appreciate the preparation. I'm excited about correcting the data and really hoping that we can highlight that. And even though I know we can't go back, Dr. Levy, and change the states, I'm thinking, why can't we? It's wrong.
It's gone. It's
I mean, I
submitted.
really don't, I don't like, if someone pulled up some data from years back, I don't like what they're gonna see about our district. I wish we could do something about that, but.
Well, I mean, we can still create that data. We
Yeah.
can still message that
Sure.
information,
Yeah.
and I think we should, and,
And I
not
also
to
think we should
repeat,
ask.
but-
You may have already, but, since this is clearly an error, is there any way we can put something on the website that would send them to the more updated data? So, we're,
That'll definitely have to be something local.
yeah,
I think it's all gonna be local, but we can, maybe we can put the data together, the correct data, what it should be.
yeah,
I think we
If
should.
can go back and actually change what is in the state system. I don't believe we can, but we can report what the corrected data and show this is what it was, this is what it really should be.
right,
So we
right.
can,
Yeah.
Something like that, rather
Yeah.
than sit past it, but,
And then you can contact Chuck Gowdy and let him know.
yeah.
A special report.
Right.
Can I contribute one comment?
I looked
Can you
around
hear
like,
me?
Yeah,
what? Yes,
I don't know how loud I am. Am I loud?
you're great.
you're perfect.
Okay. I'm just curious if you do go back retroactively and sort of create a shadow report or ETHS, report that's sort of the real story report. If it would be possible to get some kind of sense in terms of telling the story, I would be interested in knowing what the interventions, the positive interventions that you've developed over the last several years, the restorative practices, et cetera, when some of those interventions were introduced, and if there's any correlation to, declining rates of, in-school suspensions or other kinds of, if there's a correlation between, those positive interventions and the lessening of negative behaviors, for example.
Okay.
Does that seem worthwhile, or would that be? I mean, we know that maybe there isn't any real way to quantify that, but it does seem like it would be valuable in terms of lessons learned to say, these kinds of things do work, and these things, we see it in the data this way.
We can measure the recidivism rate for different types of behavior based on those interventions that students have received, whatever program or classes that they've gone through. So there are some ways that we can measure that. And I believe student services, when they do their report, they talk about the students who were in SUI and SEP, and but I don't know if the recidivism rate is there. There is, if you look in this particular report, we noted recidivism rate for students who earned more than one suspensions. But that's a great point. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that would be, interesting to take a look at. All right. Well, thank you again, both of you, all of you. I know you have a whole team, a whole committee working, and will continue to work as you will start the school year off, kicking off tomorrow. So thank you again for this information, this really important charge ahead. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure, and just wanted to personally wish Dr. Weatherspoon well. Know him from way back. I remember seeing and being under his leadership 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, when he was a
Really?
superintendent in a different district.
Keith actually was a high school English teacher in my high school, the district I was superintendent in Indianapolis, Indiana.
India, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yep.
goodness.
And we reconnected when I got here.
Oh, wow.
You just never know, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, and he was a superstar then.
Blessings. Thank you so much, and appreciate the time.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks. I don't think I'm leaving. I see Pete coming up.
All right, so I think Dr. Levy is going to stay in her seat. So we're moving on. The next item is multi-year evaluation framework, a logic model that Dr. Davis and Dr. Levy are going to present.
And you know, we haven't had Dr. Bavis up for a little while. Some board meetings are the Dr. Bavis show. But he actually has the next two items. So we're trying to if we weaned him away, we're trying to wean him back.
Well, thank you, and I had to get my glasses on for this because I have to be able to actually see the presentation. So I'm going to jump right in. What we're going to talk about tonight is the multi-year evaluation framework and logic model that we're using to collectively evaluate all of the changes we've made this school year. So this is essentially in one page, the logic model overview. And we're going to go through these tonight. And we're going to give you everybody, once we have this completely, fleshed out, we're going to send that out to the board for review. But this is an update. This is where we are right now. So this is the Kellogg logic model. We'll talk about the situation. We'll talk about our inputs, the outputs, and the outcomes and impacts that we're looking for. So what we start with the situation, and what the situation is the context. What's our context right now? Well, all students are re-entering the high school full-time after over a year of remote learning. We want to rehumanize the educational experience, address student staff well-being as we reintegrate back to ETHS, create a more supportive environment, slow down the pace of the day, and create equity-driven systemic change. What are the inputs? What do we have going on this year that's a little different that we're living through? Well, we've implemented a block schedule. We talked about that a little earlier this evening with Dr. Campbell. There are fewer class transitions each day. And what we've done is we've increased the passing period time to 10 minutes. By increasing that passing period, we slow down that hectic pace. We've eliminated semester exams. We have clear tardy detention and social probation. We've cleared those. We've increased the use of restorative practices. We've heard about that from Dr. Robinson. We've increased the use of restorative practices. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. It's the bifocal effect. We've scheduled time for student services, supports, and interventions, and we are committed to boots on the ground professional learning and support. So what are the outputs? Who do we want to reach, and what do we want to do? Well, we want to get feedback from students, certified staff, non-certified staff, and Carrie informed me today that through our partnership with NERA, we're going to be able to get parental feedback. They're going to help quarterback that effort, which is a very labor-intensive effort, but they're going to work and partner with us on getting parental feedback as well. And we're very, very happy, and that's a news flash. That's today's real, true update to this model. What do we want to do? Well, we want to look at our structural changes, our block schedule, our SEL mindfulness practices, our student support interventions, and get feedback from those folks on this. We also want to look for our professional learning. We want to get feedback on our effective instructional practices SEL skill and practices within the classroom, implementing technology. This is a very interesting year for implementing technology in the classroom because we came off such an intensive technology experience the last year and a quarter. So what technology is really sticking in the classroom? What are we doing in the classroom to really leverage that learning that we've had over the last year and a quarter? And finally, cultural responsive instructional practices, getting feedback on those practices in the classroom. So what are those outcomes, in our logic model? We have three types of outcomes. We have short-term outcomes, midterm outcomes, and long-term outcomes. So in the short term, we're looking at, under social emotional learning and well-being, improved attitudes about self, others, and tasks. And we're looking at that from students, we're looking at that from staff. SEL behaviors, increase in on-time arrival to class and time spent in class. So we're looking really about, are students attending class, are they on time? We're tracking tardies and looking at, how much seat time the students are getting. Not just seat time on paper through our schedule, but actual physical seat time, the amount of time students are present in class. And finally, SEL academics. We're looking for improved classroom experience, more engagement. And you see that under the midterm. As I'll just transition into those. In the midterm, what are we looking for? Increased sense of belonging and connection. We know that, we've heard forever and we've seen examples, we heard about examples tonight that, having a caring adult makes a huge difference in a student's experience in high school. So we really want to look at that and make that an outcome to increase that sense. And we have ways of measuring that. SEL behaviors, how do we decrease discipline referrals and social probations? How do we decrease in-school suspensions? And finally, under SEL academic, how do we increase, we want to see increased classroom engagement. We know that students learn more when they're engaged. We have blocks of time to work with that we've never had before to engage students. So we want to really see that increased classroom engagement. And then out of that, increase academic outcomes, because we know if students are engaged, it leads to rich academic outcomes. So in the long term, what are we looking for in the long term? Well, a decrease in reported stress related to school, increased participation in school activities. Those are under our social emotional learning and well-being piece. Under social emotional learning and behavior, decrease in chronic absenteeism and truancy. And under SEL academic, increase on track to graduate, and increase in completion of viable, and I say viable post-secondary plans. To me, it's not enough to have a plan on paper. It has to be viable. And we actually have technology now through School Links that allows us to not just have those plans written, but actually extend those plans into work-based experiences, mentoring, and things like that we can actually track for the first time. So our evaluation plan, and again, this is a collective evaluation. I always say this is a collective evaluation. This isn't any one individual's evaluation. We're not evaluating a math teacher or a math department chair who's over my shoulder here. We're not evaluating individuals here. We're evaluating the collective. How are we doing as an institution in meeting those established goals? So we have several research questions that we've developed, and I'll just go through those briefly. What is the impact of the structural changes on student mental health and well-being? How does this differ by student demographic? Again, disaggregating that data. And very interested in that as a research question, because all of these research questions are gonna inform not just the evaluation component, but they're gonna help us form what are called SMARTY goals, and I'll have Carrie speak to SMARTY goals in a minute. What's the impact of our structural changes on staff, mental health, and well-being? Staff are such a crucial component. We can't have meaningful classroom experiences, meaningful experiences within the school period without attending to staff mental health and well-being, now more than ever. And how do the systemic changes support a more equitable educational experience for students? Our school is a learning institution. It's a student-focused institution, and we really need to focus on our students again and on those equitable educational experiences. What is the impact of structural changes on students' attendance and discipline patterns? And how has the classroom experience changed? How has instruction changed? And how has student participation and engagement changed? And how are we going to do it? Well, got several domains. First is our social emotional well-being and support domain, broken into student and staff well-being. You see our objectives there, but I want to go to the type of analysis we're going to use, because I think that's where the rubber hits the road on this. Student feedback loops, we're going to have focus groups, quick checks, student survey data. We already have a well-being and climate survey that we're going to leverage, and we have 5 essential data longitudinally pre-pandemic that we can also look at. And finally, student surveys in all grades to look at student emotions and coping skills. How are we going to gather this information and feedback on these structural changes and stress mental health for staff? We have staff survey, again, using staff interviews and focus groups, and we also have 5 essential data. And we have Carrie's team who's going to be executing a lot of this. So when we're talking about focus groups, those are intensive, but this is the same team. Carrie's team has done the curriculum reviews where they've done over 500, a focus group of over 500 students, so I'm sure, how many now? Over 700 students. So again, they're an amazing team, and they'll be able to do those focus groups for staff and for students. In our second domain, social, emotional, and behavioral, we're going to look at attendance and discipline. And under attendance, we're really going to look at exploring relationships between discipline, grades, and attendance. I think that gets to the question that Liz asked a little bit earlier about sort of correlations between suspension and academic outcomes. And then we also have the analysis of chronic absenteeism and truancy rates. And again, these are longitudinal analysis. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a cohort three cohorts pre-pandemic, and then we're going to build the cohorts post-pandemic. So that's important. So our baseline is very robust in terms of the this kind of data. In our discipline, longitudinal analysis, we're looking at all of those things we just talked about. And it's analysis of discipline data, analysis of implementation of Tier 1 discipline supports. Again, a lot of that is built off of pre-existing data, so that's quantitative, and then we just build those sets out as we go. Carrie keeps saying, yeah, she keeps nodding in affirmation. She's very excited that I'm getting this all correct. Carrie, jump in if I make any mistake. We also have our social, emotional, and academic. This is our student academics. Again, we have more longitudinal analysis. We're looking at semester grades. We'll be tracking those. We're also looking at our metric for on-track to graduation. The nice thing about those data sets is they go back quite a ways. They're very robust, and we can, again, we can disaggregate those by subgroup, and we can do that cohort analysis, multi-year cohort analysis. For student engagement, this is, again, through the student engagement report and student focus group interviews. And finally, here's the nice thing. We're doing instructional practices. Carrie and her team aren't just going, they are going to have staff surveys, staff interviews and focus groups on instructional practices. But what they're also going to do is they're going to do these classroom observations that they're going to aggregate. So again, we're not evaluating any one teacher, any group of teachers. We're not looking at Dale over my shoulder in the math department. What we're looking at is the overall experience, culturally responsive social emotional learning, and cultural responsive practices within the context of dozens, if not hundreds of our classrooms. I'm writing that, I hope that goes into this, I hope everybody remembers, hundreds of classroom observations for her team. Now this is, they're not looking at teachers, they're looking at student engagement. It's really important. That's what really allows us to then aggregate, put together all those data points. And Carrie and her team were trained over the summer. What were you folks trained in exactly? What tool?
It's called CLASS, is the acronym observation tool. It's out of University of Virginia. It's a tool we used about 10 years ago when we did the restructured freshman year, and we did classroom observations across all of the humanities. And the way I can say it's hundreds is because you would go in, for example, to a class and you would take 2 observations. And we're looking to do this. This evaluation plan is a multi-year plan, so it's going to build on itself every year. And so those would build over time, and then it's an aggregate. So you're looking at a big picture of a kind of school-wide over specific measures. And while the tool may have a whole bunch of different measures, we're going to have the constructs that like specifically connect with this plan and what we're really looking at. So it's really looking at student interactions and their experiences in the classroom.
Thank you for that clarification, Carrie. I really appreciate it. This is exciting stuff. So this year in particular, what we're going to, since this is our implementation year, we're going to be tracking all of these things. But we're going to be paying particular attention to our 5 essential survey. Teacher and student data provides important feedback. We have that 5E. This is a plug for the 5E. This is the earliest plug ever for the 5E. Just you wait when this comes out in January. Parents, students, all, we're going to do the student administration, we're going to get the parents in, and we're going to have our staff do it, because it's critically important coming off the pandemic year that we had, and we're still in a pandemic, but it's critically important to have that waypoint. Our research department will communicate throughout the year and brief staff and student surveys and opportunities for qualitative feedback. One of the things I always do is I draw this distinction between quantitative and qualitative feedback. So quantitative feedback, discipline data, numbers, averages, how many numbers of this and that. So think numbers. And qualitative is more experiential. Think classroom observations that Carrie and her team are doing. Think about survey data, and think about focus groups. So several years ago, we would only have really been able to do survey data and grade data and things like that, quantitative data, maybe some survey data, and that would have been it. We wouldn't have been able to do the focus groups because we wouldn't have had capacity, and we wouldn't have had capacity to do the classroom observations to the level which we're embarking on. So we've made significant changes this school year, and we're backing it with a multi-year evaluation, collective evaluation, that's going to be richly qualitative, as well as having the quantitative data that we're very, very familiar with. Are there questions? And there'll be more to come. This is just hey, here's where we are right now. We're building out some more. We're going to be attaching goals to these, SMART E goals, and I'll let Carrie just briefly give you that acronym, because I mess up one of the letters every time. Go ahead.
SMARTY, okay, so specific, like what will change, for example, during the year, measurable, attainable, what can we expect to achieve that's both ambitious and feasible, relevant, timely, what's the time frame for the accomplishment, and then inclusive, which is what makes it the IE, inclusive, how will we bring in traditionally marginalized or excluded voices, so think student voice, which is not traditionally captured, and in this type of work. And then equitable, is the change moving us toward greater equity, and does it align with our goals? So that's the SMART-E. And that comes from Castle, which is a lot of the framework for the work we're doing, but also has really informed a lot of this evaluation plan, and how we're thinking about how we're looking at and measuring a lot of the social emotional work and learning that we're doing. So that the SMART-E goals, we took that framework from Castle, adapted that from Castle.
I would also be remiss, Carrie, if I didn't thank Dr. Campbell for convening a committee, broad-based committee, looking at these changes and helping to develop this model. So thank you, Dr. Campbell. Questions right now? Now, I know this is just the briefest of overviews, and we will be providing, like I say, you'll get all the evaluation plan, you'll get all of this information when it's finalized, but I wanted to give you guys an update at the very beginning of the school year as to where we are, and I'm very proud of the fact that we are following the Kellogg logic model, and that it's been populated the way it's been populated, and it seems Herculean to do all this work, but I appreciate it, Carrie, and we'll have real things to report on, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat.
So this is awesome. Thank you. I'm so excited. On a number of levels. One is that we learned a lot in the last year and a half from a really bad situation, and found some of those hidden gems that can help us improve our practice, and I love that we are doing that, and that we're measuring that, and we're measuring and really getting into what works, how does it work, who does it help, who doesn't. I just love this. So this is amazing. The other thing I wanted to say is that I know it's a heavy lift, but getting the voices into the work is so important. All voices, parents, teachers, but especially students. I can't tell you the number of things I have read over the last year plus related to COVID, related to equity, related to anti-racist training and teaching, where there's no voices of students, and they're using parents and teachers as proxies, which sometimes is right, but why not just ask the people that are being impacted by these issues directly. And we just learn so much by listening to students. And I know from being on Curriculum Forum and talking to students there, where focus groups are done there, and other places that you report out on focus groups, I'm always excited to see that. And to see you do this in such a systemic way and lift that voice, whatever it is. It could be telling you all kinds of different things, but it's just so powerful and important. So I just really want to give you a huge thank you for that and a shout out for this as sort of a practice going forward whenever we're doing anything, right? And I know it already is, which is I'm excited about, but I'm seeing here just a real robust, thorough way of doing that. And I think it's critical. I think we need to listen to our kids, and we got amazing kids here, so they've got a lot to say, and I'd love to hear it. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I agree, and that the qualitative piece, I think, is like so important, and we're trying to be like really, really methodical. Like, this is why I love my job. Like this, as a researcher, getting to do this and just really making sure every step is intentional, and that the questions that we're asking, we're using the most appropriate method, and the qualitative piece and bringing in those experiences and triangulating it with the data that we've always collected, that we will always collect. But taking the time to do that is really like going to be a big focus for this. So I'm really excited about that.
And I think qualitative gets a bad rap in the research world, and I couldn't disagree more.
I agree.
Because you just learn so many things, particularly from listening to students. So thank you very much.
And thank you. This is truly ambitious and I think so responsive to the moment. And so part of my thought, not to put you on the spot, so you don't have to say anything, but is to think about, so when we do ask them for their opinions, them being our students, especially like I'm thinking about the Mondays where it's rapid pace compared to those great block days, what might we do with that information? And if they knew, like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to ask you because we might change it even more, or whatever it may be, could be a great incentive to help them kind of speak to that. And then the second thing is maybe I'm on the receiving end of bad data in another life, but with the 5 essentials, will it be disaggregated by demographics and open to the public? Because I have found that they're not in.
So it is open to the public, and they do disaggregate, but I'll have to look and see if that's publicly available. But there's some very specific questions within the 5 essentials that we are pulled out to target. So it's not all of it, some very specific, and we don't get disaggregated, but you have to go into and like really dig around. And so that's what we will, they don't make it easy.
Not at all.
So we will do that as we can to go in and continually try to pull out the disaggregated data.
Great, thank you.
And thank you for the early plug for the 5 essentials, because we have been challenged to get enough data to use that. So thank you. We'll see what happens. I know that last year when we talked about it, we gave all these ideas and suggestions. So hopefully you have those somewhere. And
yes, and we can now like link it. Like we are using the data, and this is how we're using some of the specific data, and this is why it's so important.
Yeah, it is.
I think linking it to the evaluation plan will elevate its participation. That's my hope.
Yeah. And I would say I have never been more excited about an evaluation plan than this one right here.
I know, this is really awesome. This is very thorough and responsible, really. Other thoughts, questions, comments? Well, wonderful. More to come, right? Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to move on to the new course proposals, course changes.
And Dr. Bavis, this is going to be the shortest report of the evening. No, he already assured me. That's not just a hint. But we do have some good movement forward here too, as you'll hear. And I'm especially excited about our earned honors. Maybe that's why Dale is sitting in the back.
Well, I'm going to start with a 20-minute overview of the process. I'm not. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. How about that? All of our changes are aligned to District Goal 1, which is up there. I think it's very important for everyone just to remind ourselves of District Goal 1 and how that really drives the work in terms of our new courses and course changes. And the purpose, of course, is to improve student achievement and to clarify academic pathways for students. Sometimes our students enter an academic pathway and they don't quite know what to expect. So we've done some work in that area tonight, and we'll share some of that. This is the brief part, and then I can go back and fill in the blanks. So for fine arts, we have 3 new courses we're proposing. We're proposing 2 piano. Each year we have about 12 students that want to continue to take piano. We currently only offer 1 piano. So this would be a nice extension of 1 piano into 2 piano. And those 12 students actually can take 2 piano in the same classroom as 1 piano because the students have Bluetooth headsets and keyboards that play to themselves that they can hear themselves, and the instructor can click into each of the Bluetooth sets, so then provide feedback directly to each individual student. So technically, I suppose you could have 5 levels of piano in there, but we're only going to have 2. So I thought that was really interesting technology-wise, what we can do there. We have 3 music technology. Music technology is one of our most diverse fine arts courses, and students really, really appreciate it. And they've been just really, really looking for a third level. And each year, this year, for example, we had 12 students request independent study in that area after they took 2 music technology. So it's kind of exciting to be able to offer that course. Again, it can be integrated with music technology 1 and 2 within the same confines of a classroom because the students, again, have headsets. I mean, they don't have Bluetooth, but they have headsets, and they're working on their own production, and they're working on music portfolios. That's really important. They learn to apply a portfolio for the industry in this course. So it's portfolio driven, and I just absolutely love portfolio driven courses. They're going to build resume, websites of their work to showcase it, and collaborate with others to make music, including community partners. We have some community partners in music production that are willing to partner with our students to have hands-on experiences. So we think that's just very, very exciting. And finally, learn to play music, which I think could potentially be a game changer. We have students every year who enter the high school and want to participate in band, orchestra, chorale, but they don't. They've never either they haven't taken an instrument, or they haven't had, or they haven't taken an instrument in a while. So this course offers introduction into that experience, and we just see it as a real great way to onboard students into music. And potentially join an ensemble in the spring or join the band in the spring. We see it as a great springboard for our students. So again, those are our fine arts offerings. I think we'll just go in. Are there any questions about our fine arts offerings since they're up there? They're no questions. Okay.
Excellent.
Mathematics. We have 1 new course, which is very exciting. New course. I'll talk about the new course first. The new course is data science, and data science. This is a course that we've been working with Joe Bowler, who's a math education professor out at Stanford, and we're also working with our friends at Northwestern on this. And to quote Joe Bowler, the professor, she says that the ability to work with, understand, and use data has become an essential life skill and requirement for the ever-expanding range of jobs and careers. Data is everywhere around us. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. This new data-intensive world can be difficult to navigate. Decisions that used to be straightforward are now more complex, requiring individuals to be constantly separating fact from fiction. In short, the need to analyze and interpret data is no longer confined to engineering or computer programming. It has become an essential life skill. Everywhere we turn, data is telling and weaving stories about our world. And the nice thing about this course is we'll be using local data. We'll be using locally sourced data as part of the experience. So that's the new course. And in terms of the course changes, we have we've clarified our advanced 2 algebra, advanced pre-calc honors, that pathway, because that pathway leads to BC calculus and multivariable calculus. And I want to draw a distinction here for non-math education folks that I learned from my kid, actually. My 2 students. One took AB calculus and the other took BC calculus. AB calculus is 1 semester's worth of college calculus in an entire school year. So you're getting 1 semester in 2 semesters. BC calculus is twice as much. It's 2 semesters of college calculus in 2 high school semesters. So the pacing is twice as fast. They both end up with AP credit. You know, you take the AP exam, you can get AP credit, but one is twice as fast. That's why we have an accelerated pathway for kids who enter the high school taking 2 algebra, advanced 2 algebra. They would continue into advanced pre-calc, and then they would land in BC. We're also expanding pathways and onboarding into that advanced pathway from our geometry pathway to honors, our 2 algebra pathway to honors, and our pre-calc pathway to honors. But it's not just onboarding to that. It's important that we also look at our pathway to honors courses as directly aligned to AB calculus. That's the distinction. If the word advanced is in front of the math course, it's going to BC calculus and multivariable. If the word pathway to honors is there, it's going directly aligned to AB calculus and AP statistics, with opportunities to move up into advanced if you want that faster paced BC calculus experience. Many of our students want that. Many of our students do not. Yeah. And it's a very, very important distinction. So when I talk about clarifying pathways, that's what I'm talking about. Dale, did I do a good job? All right, I got the thumbs up. Are there questions about the math changes?
I don't have a question about the change, and I know we're going to keep this short. My thought is just as we go forward, the things that are exciting, like data science, for me, I guess I should say, I'm hoping that they're available to kids and you don't have to take 3 classes to then get into the exciting class. So tell us about that.
Yes, I'll tell you about that. Okay. So right now we're looking at offering it junior year. That's the proposal. Any junior or senior could take it. We would love to be able to offer this sophomore year, or you know, in lieu of 2 algebra, which is what California is doing right now, by the way. California is saying that data science can take the 2 can replace the 2 algebra graduate, you know, their state requirement. In Illinois, 2 algebra right now is used as a metric for college readiness, and they haven't put data science there yet. Yeah. So that's why it's going to live in junior and senior year. Because we don't want to have kids make a decision that'll draw a distinction somewhere along. You know, we want to just be very clear about that. But if the state changes that, right, if the state is open to having that 2 algebra piece, if they're open to saying that data science can fulfill that college-ready criteria, then we would be more than, we would move it down straight away.
So that would be an advocacy area for us to pursue, perhaps through our regional advocacy organization, EdRed. And sometimes EdRed is accused of, you know, being negative to all sorts of things. And we're certainly looking for ways to be more positive and proactive. So something like this might fit the bill very nicely.
Awesome. Thank you, Gretchen.
We should certainly explore that.
Dale and I will be in touch. And what I did for everybody here is I put up the data science, a little more information on the slide up there. Again, a lot of this comes from Stanford, but the topics are up there. The quote I read to you guys from Joe Bowler is up there. And we also see the sample units of exploration. Data tells a story, the data of our community. Again, the idea is, I can't think of a better course, actually. In fact, when we talked about this in Curriculum Forum, what folks said is, can we eventually make this sort of a transdisciplinary experience, because it cuts across all different areas sciences, programming, modeling, all sorts of engineering. Again, it's one of these courses that brings different disciplines together and then allows folks to then go explore those individual disciplines afterwards. So our literacy teachers were excited about it too, because this is at the forefront of literacy. I mean, when I look around the world, I see a real, well, I didn't have to look around the world. You can just look at the news and you can see that the need to be equipped to understand data science, to understand data is prevalent. So we'll be in touch. Dale and I will be in touch on that advocacy piece. I'm going to transition to CTE. We're all going to offer for next school year an advanced game design and programming course. That's all I'm going to say about it. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. It's the future, yeah. And the science is offering, they're taking, now that we're on the block schedule, there used to be this summer school. If you guys have been on the board for a while, you'll remember when we approved biotechnology as a summer school course. And we were very excited about it, and it could run in the summer because the summer had, wait for it, a block of time in which you could do this course. And if you know that our science electives, like forensics and those, they were typically, they were 1 period electives, and our AP classes were double periods. So in our freshman biology and our chemistry were 7 periods a week, but our electives were always 1 period per day. And now with the block schedule, guess what? We can now take a course that was very popular in summer school, biotech, and bring it into the fold during the regular school year. This will also reduce. We're anticipating seeing a migration from forensics and astronomy. So we really want to be able to offer every junior and senior an elective science experience junior and senior year. We were able to do it this year, but our forensics classes are really pretty much, they're about as full as they can get, and our astronomy classes too. So this should pull and even it out. The kids aren't, the kids are gonna be the kids. They're all taking classes. They're all full, but now we can shuffle them in a different way and give them another experience that we're very excited about. And there's a clear, biotech is a booming field. There's lots of opportunities in terms of career pathways there. So again, very exciting development, and we're really happy to be able, thanks to the new schedule, to be able to take something that was popular in summer school and pull it over. And that's, I think I have a slide that says questions. There you go. Not as fancy as the one Dr. Robinson had. But I don't have as many questions because I answered them along the way. All right.
Thank you.
I'll see you later in the agenda.
You will. Thank you, Dr. Davis.
And board will be bringing this recommendation back for action at the next board meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dr. Davis.
Public comment.
Public comments, yes.
All
Do
right.
we have any public comments?
We
Dr.
do. We
Davis?
have Luca. Luca, how do you say your last name? Glacci from the Moran Center. Luca, you can come up to the, I'll turn this on for you. There you go.
Thank you.
So the way public comment works is you'll have 3 minutes. I'll start the timer on your first word. What I'll do is I'll let you know when there's like 2 minutes, 1 minute. My phone will beep. It'll be awkward. I'll ask you to finish your sentence. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Luca Guacci, pronouns he, they. I am the managing attorney for the James B. Moran Center's Education Advocacy Program. And as Dr. Robinson mentioned, we are grateful to be part of the conversation in the Discipline Committee and partnering with ETHS, even as Monique Parsons stated, when we don't always align and we don't always agree. We are grateful to be here. To reimagine school safety and achieve ETHS's laudable vision of building a more humanizing space, ETHS must remove school resource officers from campus, like so many other districts have done recently, including Montgomery County, Maryland, just last week. ETHS must eliminate the use of exclusionary discipline and must create a clear and consistent whole school restorative justice approach comprised of high-quality training, transparent policies and practices with student-led, staff-supported infrastructure and programming. Despite the best efforts of ETHS's SROs to divert youth from juvenile justice system and employ restorative interventions, SROs play an inherent role in policing, investigating, and arresting ETHS's students. From January 2017 through December 2019, there have been at least 30 arrests made on ETHS property. And although Black students at ETHS comprise approximately of 25% of the population, they make up 77% of the arrests. That is 300% more likely that a Black student will be arrested at ETHS than their white counterpart. We appreciate ETHS's well-intentioned rationale for having police officers on campus to, quote, protect students and staff from external threats, such as a school shooter on campus. However, there is no evidence that proves the effectiveness of SROs in preventing school violence or school shootings. And by stationing police officers on campus here on ETHS, it is harming actual students, primarily students of color. The Moran Center is also concerned by ETHS' reliance on discipline policies that disproportionately impact students of color and students with disabilities, including alternative school transfers, alternative programming, the issuance of no trespass letters, and social probation. We strongly urge ETHS to continue pursuing courses of action that keep students in their home school by employing inclusive restorative practices and by not transferring students out of ETHS without due process hearing. Students should not be counseled out. No trespass letters have been issued as a disciplinary tool that violates the current board policy. Trespass letters should explicitly provide hearing information and should not exceed 1 year in duration. Lastly, as a disciplinary policy, school probation disconnects students from ETHS community by prohibiting students from participating in extracurricular activities. ETHS should eliminate social probation as a disciplinary consequence altogether, not just this school year. We firmly believe that a school environment rooted...
You can finish your sentence.
Thank you. Rooted in restorative and trauma-informed practices will foster a stronger and safer community. Again, we are grateful to be part of this conversation. We have this report that we can pass out. It's the Reimagining School Safety that we wrote at the Moran Center. Many of you have received it electronically, but we did a hard copy. And I also have my public comment written in there if you want to reread it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And that concludes public comment for this evening.
Thank you. All right. The next item, there are 4 FOIAs in the packet. Any questions from the board regarding those? Dr. Davis, any comments regarding them?
No, the responses are in the packet.
Okay, good. All right. The next item is board committee reports. Are any board committees early? Not yet? After tomorrow?
After tomorrow.
After tomorrow. Okay, cool. All right, so the next item is student board report. Barbara, welcome. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. So throughout conversations with a lot of students, a big topic is the block schedule. I feel like that's the biggest change that we've had from 2019. So opinions were collected from 170 students, and we just asked them a simple question of, do you like the block schedule, and why not, or why do you? So 48% said that they liked the blocks, and 52% said that they did not, which is not much of a difference. That's pretty split between people who like it and who don't like it. But people who do like it have said that having classes every other day helps with homework because we have 2 nights to complete the assignment instead of the due dates being the next class period, which would be the next day. There's fewer classes in a day, that's less stressful. And also the blocks work really well when the teacher has lots of energy and multiple activities planned, as well as breaks incorporated into class agendas. So like assigned, either that be like 5-minute breaks twice or like a 10-minute break in between the period. I think this question was asked about Mondays. Mondays are actually liked because of how quick the day goes by. But I do feel like the teachers make it obvious that the lessons are very rushed and very like crumped in, but I don't think there's much that can be done about that. And the 10-minute passing periods are working really well. We appreciate that. It's hard to be late when you have 10 minutes to get around. So I think that was a good change. And on the downside, for the opinions from the 52% that said that they did not particularly like the block schedules, it was mainly just how the class was being taught in the block schedule. Not that we don't exactly like the 85-minute periods, it's just how those are approached. So when students don't bring enthusiasm into the classroom, the class doesn't have any breaks, the class feels way too long. It also feels inconsistent. You know, we used to have 9 periods a day and every class every day, we would know where to go. Now sometimes you forget if it's an orange or blue day. So it's kind of hard to get used to, and especially if like teachers change around their agendas, their lessons plan, that's really hard. So from the students, we really hope that you will take that into account, and we suggest that teachers receive directions on exactly how to manage the block, because I do think that they can be confused too, and like such a dramatic change from 2019. Instead of them doing an 85-minute lecture where we sit in our seats the whole time, it would be better if we had some breaks that were incorporated that were like recommended, not just like on a teacher personal agenda. And those breaks aren't just for like free time where we can goof off. That will help us focus more and stay on task, because, you know, after those 45 minutes, it gets particularly hard to listen and sit in your seat and not get distracted on your Chromebook and stuff like that. Another issue was that the emphasis on mental health at the beginning of the year does not feel there anymore. There was a really good point that was brought up that there's double the work being done during the class than we did 2 years ago because of the longer periods, but we are still getting the same amount of homework, which is unreasonable. If we do double the work in class, we should not be doing like having the same amount of homework after school as we did in 2019 when we had half the periods that we do now. That amount of work takes away our personal time, and it's also hard to spend, you know, about 3 hours per day on one subject, which is including classwork time and homework time. So if there was some kind of suggestion on how much homework to give out because of these 85-minute periods, that would be appreciated, because it was emphasized to me that that is affecting the mental health of students. But in general, it's not that we don't like block schedules. I think there's just some things that teachers need suggestions on, and just how to, you know, organize that 85-minute periods. So yeah, that's that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Wonderful. It's always good to hear from students and what they're thinking. And I think someone talked earlier about student voice and how important that is. So thank you for bringing that to us. All right. So, right on time, 9:30. Right. So the hearing for the 2021-22 budget for Evanston Township High School is now called to order. The first order of business is the acceptance of the notice of publication. Okay. I lost you there for a minute.
Sorry about that. I never want to interrupt anyone's presentation by starting my slideshow, so thanks for giving me a minute. So thank you again for the introduction. On August 5th, 2021, the notice of public hearing for the final budget was published, and I believe the copy is in your packet. If not, I have one that's available for viewing.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to accept the notice of publication for the budget hearing?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Angie,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes?
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Buterich,
Yes.
Savage Williams.
Yes. Thank you. All right, the next order of business is a short presentation of the budget. That's what it
Hey.
says. By our CFO,
Pete already left.
Mary
I sit
Botino.
through all of Pete Bavis's stuff. He left. I'm just teasing. I will keep this short because most of what you're seeing, I do have 23 slides, but most of what you're seeing is similar to what we talked about in June. So I will be moving through some of the slides really quickly, and then happy to talk about changes to the budget, which were minimal compared to our budget overall. So I'm going to just go quickly over some of the things that we're always concerned about because they haven't really changed. Our funding is level from the state for this year, so that's a good thing. It should stay level if our enrollment numbers, don't decline, but who knows? Things can change. I've really not heard a lot of talk about property tax freezes and pension funding, but I'm sure they'll resurface at some point. Our evidence-based funding, which started 5 years ago, is primarily what we talk about when we say that the state funding is level. That amount has already been pledged for the year since we're now into our third month of the year. But we're not really sure how that will look in the future. But so far, the school funding has remained pretty level within the state budget. At least ours has. So it's interesting, we have this state revenue called corporate property replacement tax. Sometimes you hear it called personal property replacement tax. But that has been really consistent and even a little higher than we expected. I don't really understand the formulas behind everything. I just thought that anything connected with a state revenue would be flat or maybe even decreasing. But what we're finding is that that tax has turned out to be really consistent and is even predicted that it will be a little bit larger this year. So that's good news. Of course, in the background, always the potential for, oh, it's a property fax freeze. How much better for us will that be than a property tax freeze? Sorry about that. The T's and F's look a little bit alike in this font. So that's always a possibility. We've been talking about potential pension cost shifts. And as I said before, the future of evidence-based funding. I mentioned this in June, the CPI, which is what determines how much our tax levy can increase. For the 2020 levy, which is late 2020, so it's for the collections in 2021, was 2.3%, and the next CPI rate for this year's levy in December will be 1.4. So we're going to have a really modest increase in what our tax levy can be, and then any new property that comes onto the tax rolls will also be included. I'm not exactly sure. I think that Cook County is continuing to be pretty lenient on late fees, so property taxes have been received a little bit later than in a normal year, but they've been coming in really steadily, so we're very happy about that. So I'll really talk mainly about the changes from when we met in June, but our proposed final budget is just $96.3 million, which is about a 5.2% increase over last year. Really, the only increase from the tentative to the final budget was about $400,000. It was exactly $400,000 in budgets. I'm sure the actual will be a little bit different than that. But that is from an expected increase in property taxes that we didn't know about in June. And that is not a burden to the existing taxpayers. That's actually a revenue that's coming in from new property in Evanston. So we don't always know what that'll be until we get our levy reports from the county, and usually they come in July or August. So the only change to the budget is in the education fund, and it's a $400,000 increase. And I made a few notes. Let me just grab those. On how we were proposing to spend that money, because you don't see the detail in this presentation, but you will see it in the actual accounts in the budget book if you look. But just to kind of give you an idea of where the $400,000 was allocated, we have some of the money going to social work, some of the money, the social work department, some of the money, about $40,000 to student activities, tech staffing and services, community service, alt school, and then other support services, which is a bit of a general bucket, but that allows us to be able to transfer money out to a department should a budget transfer be necessary during the year. And then those are the ones that we come back to you in August with that report on how budget transfers were done. So we put the majority of the money, about half of that property tax increase, in other support services so that we can determine where it's needed. And if it's not needed, it would provide us with a bit of a surplus at the end of the year. So things are still sort of settling in, so I imagine that a majority of that $200,000 in other support services will go out to some of the academic departments. We were just made aware that we're hiring another paraprofessional and special ed today, so some of that money would get transferred out there as needs arise. So nothing too extreme. 400,000 in the scheme of our overall budget is not a lot, but it did cause some of these percentages from last year to this year to change. And I just want to remind you that some of these percentages, 5.2%, 7.9% in our operating funds, those are larger than normal increases when we talk about it from year to year in these meetings. And that's because if you remember from the tentative to the final budget last year, we did some pretty, I would say, pretty sizable cuts. I think it was about $1.3 million from tentative to final last year because things were so uncertain in the pandemic environment. So when you see these percentages of increase this year, they look a little larger than normal, but that's because numbers actually decreased in a lot of areas last year. So the budget, this hasn't changed, but the budget also includes an allocation of about $2.3 million in the federal relief funds, which is a large part of our overall allocation. And I know that there are some conversations being had now about how we plan to spend that money. I think Marcus is going to address some of that in a little bit. Not during the budget presentation, but so we have some money earmarked in the budget for that. That hasn't changed from June. I think everything on this slide, we've already talked about evidence-based funding, categorical state aid, that's pretty flat from year to year, and then federal aid I just mentioned. So again, property taxes are a blend of two levy years in Cook County, so the 2020 and the 2021, which will be a blend of 2.3 and 1.4%. So pretty modest increases are what's allowable on our property taxes. Again, we think there will probably be some later payment dates as we move through this fall and next spring. And just regarding student fees, we don't have any planned increases to student fees or parking fees. As you all know, many summer school courses were free this past summer. We don't have any planned increases for next summer. And if it's decided, we can use federal aid to subsidize summer school again next year. So no surprises here. Of our revenues, about 83% are from local property taxes. And so you can see where the biggest revenue source is for the district. And as always, when we look at the budget, we consider our values-based budgeting, and we try to maintain reduced or at least stable levels for contractual services, supplies, and we're always looking at, we're not in an environment really of personnel attrition, but we're always cautious about that if it comes up. So on the expense side, no surprises again, the 68 and the 8% represent our salaries and fringe, so 76% of our overall budget is for people and the benefits associated with them. And then the next largest group is purchase services, which covers a lot of different types of services. So overall, this is similar but a little bit higher than the number we talked about in June. Salaries overall are increasing just under 6% overall due to employment contract. We don't have any employment contracts that are at that level, but
overall they're increasing almost 6%. One of the reasons is raises in the contractual obligations. There was some rehiring of employees who had been laid off last year. We have a few new positions. I think the board is already aware because they've been talked about for a little bit, and I think Marcus is going to touch on those. And then an increase in hours for some staff, particularly in nutrition services that have been cut last year. And the continued trend of higher but stable enrollment does cause us to occasionally add a position or two. So none of these categories have really changed dramatically since June. Again, you will see some of what appears to be larger increases like supplies and materials by 29%, but we really tried to implement some cuts last year in those categories along with cuts in purchase services. So that's why those numbers look a little bit high. But if you compared this budget to 2 years ago, the percentages are very reasonable overall. So the education fund is the one we talk about the most, and that has about a 7.3% increase over fiscal 21. But again, that's primarily due to those cuts because that's mainly where we cut last year at this time. And there's also a little bit of increase in the education fund because of a budget a plan to use some of the federal aid. So the only other fund I have detailed for you in this presentation is our operations and maintenance fund. It's our second largest fund, and it has a 12.2% increase, and that's primarily due to some plans to use some of the federal aid for some building projects that would fit into the parameters for the COVID relief package. Also, some of the increases are due to contractual salary and some cost of supplies. You've all heard about shortages and increases in cost of supplies for this year. So again, instruction is always a top priority whenever we're looking at cuts. We try to stay away from anything that affects the classroom. We're always trying to maintain reasonable student-teacher ratios and avoid personnel layoffs. So once again, we'll be monitoring the state's condition. Things seem relatively stable right now as far as our revenues from the state. We do try to install capital expenditures that reduce operating costs. We're going through a building automation system upgrade right now, which is part of why it was hot in here earlier, I think. But they had to come manually adjust that, so I think we're good. And we're continuing our wellness strategies and planned reorganizations as needed. And I have the fanciest question slide of all. I don't care what Dr. Robinson or Dr. Bavis say, but I did inherit it from Bill Stafford. So I'm happy to take your questions if you have any. Nothing too exciting in here. And I'm not offended if it's not exciting to you.
Thank you, Mary. You always do such a great job presenting. It's always, I just appreciate how easy it is to understand this budget and the topics and the terms. So thank you so much.
I appreciate all your interest at 9:45. You've all missed this.
Yes, we have. We've missed you.
Yeah.
Mary, maybe before I retire, we'll put you on early in the evening. But that was only a maybe.
I don't know that you know how to do early.
Wait, no, I did in one of the remote meetings, if you remember, because I'm like the only one who wasn't canceled for most of the presentation. So I was at home, but I remember there was a meeting where I was up at like 7:30, and I told you all I didn't know what to do. It was like 7:30. So there was one.
Okay, Pat.
So yes, I also want to thank you for making it easy and more, I say this a lot, we tease you about your slides and stuff, but literally, I mean, coming out of the year we've been in, year and a half, and just seeing how solid we are, it just is another reminder of how much your work is appreciated, and you and your team and the leadership, it's just unbelievable. So thank you, thank you, thank you. One quick question, I think we talked about this maybe in June. You're going to track the aid, the federal relief money, and track that sort of as a separate column so we can be transparent about it, right?
It has to be tracked in separate general ledger accounts, and I know Gretchen mentioned, having some discussions overall as we get to some of these things.
Yeah.
But yes, actually what we kind of learned the hard way is that there were 3 rounds of funding, and they all have to be tracked in complete separate sets of general
Of
ledger accounts.
course,
So
yeah.
that's something,
Okay.
no one's interested in that but me, but we learned that the hard way.
Right, but it will be
Yeah.
one of those things that someone will ask, and so it's just good to have that.
Yeah.
I know it's a
Like
hassle
the
for you.
state, they'll,
Right, well, the
Yeah.
state, but even like someone in the public
I
might
know,
be
I'm just
curious,
teasing
so,
you.
yeah. But the other thing I just wanted to say is really, Eric often says in the cover note to the budget, the threats are what we don't know, right? And so I want to take that to a different level, which is we're bringing our staff and our students back after 18 months, and they're in very different places than they were when we saw them in March of 2020. So, I always go to, do we need more social workers, or are we going to need something to support our students or support our adults? And I just hope that you all will come back to us in a month or a couple months if you need something, because I feel very strongly, and clearly the work that you talked about tonight, you're doing all these wonderful things to acknowledge that and think about how we do that best. But I just really feel strongly that we need to respond immediately and make mid-course corrections as we need to. And if that means asking the board for money somewhere, then do it, because we don't want kids to go without whatever it is. And we just don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be so many things that all of us in the world are going to realize happened over the last year. And so I just want to make sure from our little piece of the world that we're supporting our students and our staff as immediately as possible, as soon as we recognize that, so.
And if I could add, kind of along that line, so as I went down a short list and kind of a general list of things that I've allocated some of that $400,000 to, that was a result of an expected increase in property taxes. For example, almost 40,000 of that was allocated to requests that had come in from student activities back in the spring, I think, and I had put in a little bit as I could in the tentative budget. But some of the conversations that have really been occurring now is that not only is it important to make sure our social work staff, that department is beefed up, and our psychologists, and making sure that all those, people that you talk about every day who can support students are there, and that the money is there for the positions. But it's also even as simple as some of the social events, right? Homecoming. Nicole Boyd has been talking for a long time about, we really need to make a fantastic homecoming experience, and pep rallies. And so it seems kind of simple on the surface, and honestly, as a financial person, for me, sometimes it seems a little frivolous, as I'm saying it in public. But I really have had to sort of be a little more open to listening to some of those things and then discussing them with Marcus or Eric. And so 40,000 of those dollars have gone into the student activities budget to allow for those sorts of things, not just the social emotional aspect, but also the, letting kids be kids and return to the kinds of things that they love to do. So that's also where that general other support service line will come in, so that if stuff does come up during the year, we can make those transfers to whatever department it is, psychology or social work or counseling or student activities. So I think that there's been a lot of conversations about those needs and how, A, we don't even know what some of them are, and B, how will we accommodate them. So we're definitely thinking along that same line as you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I agree with everything that you said. It's great. Other questions?
So there is a fantastic homecoming plan. Spread the word. And it only, the student activities change works out to $10 a student over the course of the year. But it's going to make the difference in what they can really plan for students to welcome them back, so.
Well, thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
I will now, well, we've already heard questions. Next is the public comment portion of the budget hearing. Are there any comments from the public?
There are none.
Okay. Hearing none, I now declare this hearing adjourned. So the board will take action on the budget in a few minutes. You're right, that is the best question slide.
I know. Pete, I don't know if you remember when I said I had the best questions.
Mine was blank, by the way.
We noticed that, but I wasn't going to say it. All right. So now we're at action items, is that correct? Yes. Okay, so items for action. The first action item is approval of the final budget for 2021 and 22. And there are some attachments in the system that go along with that. So can I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved. Second?
Roll call, please.
Livingston,
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Teterich. Teterich. Ante,
Yes.
Savage Williams,
Yes. Tara said yes, too.
Bishop?
Yes, I did hear her. Yes, she said yes.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you back.
Yes. Okay.
Lisa, do we have Stephanie? Because we,
She did say yes.
Yes, you did.
Stephanie, you said yes, correct?
Right. I was like, she didn't say anything.
Yes.
There she
Oh, there
is.
you go.
No, it's her.
It's me. I just sound like her. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm using the full mic.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't have Stephanie.
So we don't have Stephanie.
Don't have Stephanie.
I
No,
apologize.
I'm here now. I'm here now.
Okay.
My internet went out for a second.
Okay, so
Do we have to do it again?
vote on, can you vote on the final approval for the final budget?
Yes, approved.
Okay. Woo-hoo. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. All right. So the motion carries. The next item is approval of the final park school budget for 2021-22, and that's also in your packet. Can I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mansell,
Yes?
Parsons,
Yes.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Teterich,
Yes.
Ante,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Savage Williams,
Yes. Thank you. The next item is approval of press policy issue number 107.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes,
There was a
please.
question to the attorney, and I just wanted to elevate that and as we think about next steps. The district, just as a little bit of background, the district attorney reviewed policy 2240 concerning gender-specific language, and the district attorney agrees that while there is no harm in adopting policy 2240, it makes sense to edit the gender-specific language in individual policies. And here's the part that I need the board's guidance on. Some districts update the language as each individual policy comes up for review. That will take at least 5 years to get through.
Yes.
Everybody's saying yes, but no. Good. Okay, good. So I think I'm gauging this correctly. As an alternative, the board can give comprehensive authority for technical changes to the superintendent or designee, and then the administration can make the changes and report to the board on the changes
Yes.
rather than the board approving each one.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally.
Second one.
All right, so we'll do that. Do we want a resolution for next board meeting, or do we just
I
want to
think
grant
there's a
authority?
consensus here.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, great. Off to work on that, no problem. I'll get going. That's the only question I had. Now, here's just a debater's point question. Do we want to adopt 2240 for board policy development as well as a cover for this, or do we want to just say, what do we want to do with policy 22?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do that, but, for sure, but let's not let that hold up the
Right.
other
Yeah.
work.
Right, I'll do
We don't
both.
want that to be the only thing that
No.
we
Yeah.
have.
So what I'd like
So-
recorded is that we'll do both.
Yes,
Okay,
that makes sense.
great, thank you. And the recommendations are in the in the packet, and they're consistent, and the edits are in there from last time, and everything is consistent with the first read. Thank you for your, for all that information. I appreciate it. I'll get working on that right away.
Thank you, certainly. Can I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Parsons?
Yes.
Rolowitz?
Yes?
Buterich?
Yes.
Ante?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Mansell?
Yes?
Savage Williams?
Yes, thank you. The next item is the Latino Heritage Month proclamation, and it's going to be read by Lisa de la Fuente and Liz Rolowitz. It'll be in Spanish first and English alternating paragraphs.
Mes Nacional de la Herencia Hispana Latina, 15 de septiembre del 2021 a 15 de octubre del 2021. A lo largo de nuestra historia, nuestra nación ha sido enriquecida por el pasado histórico de todos lo que llaman hogar a los Estados Unidos de América. Los ancestros de la comunidad hispana latina han estado en este continente por siglos, precediendo las fronteras actuales de los Estados Unidos, y generaciones han tejido las fibras únicas en el diverso tejido de nuestro país y jugaron un importante rol en la formación de nuestro carácter nacional como un pueblo de limitadas posibilidades.
National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, September 15th, 2021 through October 15th, 2021. Throughout our history, our nation has been enriched by the storied past of all who call the United States of America home. Ancestors of America's Hispanic Latino community have been on this continent for centuries, preceding the current boundaries of the United States, and generations have woven unique threads into the diverse fabric of our country and played an important role in shaping our national character as a people of limitless possibility.
Como señaló el presidente Barack Obama, los hispanos y latinos contribuyen al éxito de nuestra nación de maneras extraordinarias. Ellos sirven en las Fuerzas Armadas y el gobierno, asisten a las escuelas en toda América y fortalecen la economía. Ellos son el padre que trabaja en 2 empleos para darle a sus hijos una mejor vida, y la madre que se aventura a tomar un riesgo y comenzar un negocio. Ellos son el estudiante que persigue sus más grandes aspiraciones mediante la educación superior. Ellos son el residente legal permanente que busca naturaleza y convertirse un ciudadano en el líder de negocios cuyos seres queridos han vivido en los Estados Unidos por generaciones. Ellos muchas veces son bilingües, una invalorable intelectual habilidad del idioma que nos esforzamos en brindar a todos nuestros estudiantes. Cada día vemos el tremendo impacto que ellos tienen en nuestras comunidades y ellos reflejan una verdad perdurable en el corazón de nuestra nación. No importa de dónde vienen o de dónde son sus raíces. Con trabajo duro y perseverancia pueden lograrlo en América.
As President Barack Obama noted, Hispanics and Latinos contribute to our nation's success in extraordinary ways. They serve in the military and government, attend schools across America, and strengthen the economy. They are the father who works 2 jobs to give his children a better life, and the mother who ventures out to take a risk and start a business. They are the student who pursues their greatest aspirations through higher education. They are the lawful permanent resident who seeks to naturalize and become a citizen, and the business leader whose loved ones have lived in the United States for generations. They are oftentimes bilingual, an invaluable intellectual language skill that we strive to provide all our students. Each day, we see the tremendous impact that they have on our communities, and they reflect an enduring truth at the heart of our nation. No matter where you come from or where your roots are, with hard work and perseverance, you can make it in America.
Para honrar los logros de los hispanos y latinos en América, el Congreso, mediante Ley Pública 100-402, según enmienda, ha autorizado y solicitado emitir una proclama designando del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre como el Mes Nacional de la Herencia Hispana Latina.
To honor the achievements of Hispanics and Latinos in America, the Congress, by Public Law 100-402, as amended, has authorized and requested issuing annually a proclamation designating September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month.
Por tanto, nosotros, la Junta de Educación del Distrito 202, proclamamos que en celebración de los excepcionales líderes hispano-latinoamericanos del pasado, presente y futuro, y las valiosas contribuciones de la comunidad hispana-latina, proclamamos del 15 de septiembre del 2021 al 15 de octubre del 2021 como el mes de la herencia hispana-latina en la escuela preparatoria del municipio de Evanston.
Therefore, we, the Board of Education of District 202, proclaim that in celebration of past, present, and future exceptional Hispanic Latino American leaders and the valuable contributions of the Hispanic Latino community, do hereby proclaim September 15th, 2021 through October 15th, 2021 as Hispanic Latino Heritage Month at Evanston Township High School.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. It's always so powerful. Could I have a motion for approval of this resolution, please?
So move. Second?
Roll call, please.
Rolowitz,
Yes.
Kuterich,
Yes.
Ante,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Monsell,
Yes?
Parsons,
Yes.
Savage-Williams.
Yes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of fiscal year 22 consolidated district plan for ISBE, approval of stipends for administrators and staff, approval of minutes, closed session meeting August 9th, 2021, and regular meeting August 9th, 2021, release for public information minutes of closed sessions January 2021 to June 2021, and destruction of closed session tapes, approval of bills, treasurer's report from July 2021, personnel agenda, which consists of appointments to staff, exempt support staff and safety, change in status, certified adjustment, salary corrections of safety and operations, educational, stipends, overload, mentors, leaves of absence, maternity and paternity, certified safety, resignation, administrator, retirement, administrator, certified, exempt, and there's an addendum which consists of appointments to staff, safety, nutrition services, and athletics, change in status, educational.
So moved.
Second.
Roll
Before
call.
we vote, I just have one very quick question.
Yes, certainly.
On the, that consolidated district plan memorandum, I'm just wondering, I know we see these things every year, they're very tiny and hard to read. But my simple question is there anything notable that has changed from the submission of our plan since last year to this year?
No.
Dr. Witherspoon?
No, I'm sorry, I was gonna.
Anybody?
No, there was no change.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to compare because they had last year's language on there, but
Good question.
honestly, I was losing my mind.
So
So
hard to
thank you.
read the-
It is.
So thank you for that clarity.
Very
Okay, let's vote.
Good question.
So, motion on the table. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. All right, we're at old and new business. Does anyone have old or new business to present?
Just very quickly, I know the hour is late. We had previously had a standing item related to COVID on our board meeting agendas. And I know we had so much other actual substance aside from COVID, which was actually welcome relief. But I do think we need to have some board discussion about some of the COVID protocols that are happening right now, including issues related to mandates around vaccines and masks and so forth. So I'm hopeful that at our next meeting, we could return to some of those topics and get the board in the loop on some of those important things. But I have to say, I thought the substance tonight was terrific, and it was maybe not a bad thing to take a breather from all things COVID. Thanks very much.
And COVID has actually come up a lot tonight.
Yes, it has. Yeah, you're right,
Talking
you're
about
right.
students
But I
returning
think that we centered,
Yes.
and what I appreciate is that we've centered education. What struck me recently as I get our education newsletters that come into our email box, whereas it used to be, all those newsletters used to be about, teaching our children, the exclusive topic in those newsletters right now relates to mask mandates. And it's ridiculous. I cannot imagine all the wasted time in districts around this country who should be focusing on education who are having those debates. So, thank you.
Yes, I found tonight very refreshing, very refreshing. It's like, it's good to be back.
In the work.
Yes, have all these reports, it was awesome. Okay, other old or new business? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Happy to. Motion to adjourn.
Go ahead.
All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Aye.
What?
That was an aye. That was a delayed aye. Okay, we are adjourned.